is it all, is it all going to be well, and it's all about love, and we're totally forgiven for everything?
Well, basically, you go up one level in vibration in between embodiments. So a third density soul goes into the fourth density astral planes. A fourth density soul goes into the fifth density etheric planes, and so on, typically. Not always, but typically. And that can seem like going to heaven, but the real heavens are the celestial planes, 7, 8, and 9. And when a soul passes from the body into the celestial planes, it's called spiritual ascension. And many of us have had that experience. That's the true dying and going to heaven. But normally they just go up one level, and then they do a life review, and they look at what they learned in that lifetime. There's another movie, it was called Defending Your Life, that came out many years ago. And it's a little bit like that movie. Of course, it's Hollywood, flavor to it, but still, it's a little bit like that movie where and here's when you were 5 years old and you were selfish, or here's when you were 8 years old and you took on guilt from your father. And so this is kind of like a life review that takes place in between lifetimes. And then there's a phase where the soul tries to make amends to the people it offended during that lifetime. And then later on, there's the preparation for coming back in. Who do I want as my parents? Where do I want to be born? These kind of things. And the more evolved the soul is, the more conscious the soul is about choosing enlightened parents, if possible, and things like that. Some souls just want to have an earthly experience. They don't care who they come in through. They just want to come in,
Yeah, it seems like there are all sorts of variations here.
There's what we call old souls who come in specifically to help humanity. That's their 99% of their purpose for coming in is to help humanity. And then there's the younger souls, and maybe some of them want to experience war. I'm curious about war. I want to experience that. We call those baby souls. They're once a soul reaches a certain level, they're not going to want to experience war anymore. It's like, been there, done that. It's horrible. Let's experience something higher than war. And so, yeah, this is a melting pot planet. There's people here who are at a very low vibration and a very high vibration.
Right. How can we know who we are? Like, I bet everybody listening is like, so where am I on this scale?
Well, that's one of the things I do in my personal sessions is we talk about life purpose and mission. And, why am I here? What am I here to accomplish in this lifetime? And that we go into those things in the personal sessions and in some of the workshops as well. And, but a lot of times we really spend most of our focus on healing the core negative beliefs and the emotional traumas. Being born is a trauma for most of us. We're in a warm, dark, watery womb, and then all of a sudden we're in a bright, cold, harsh place being poked and prodded, perhaps, And so that's traumatic. Just being born into this world is traumatic.
It starts immediately.
And then, of course, maybe the parents had a fight while we were in the womb, and we feel the negative energy coming into the womb, from the fight, things like that. So it's amazing we're doing as well as we are, considering all of that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, early childhood is where we get most of our programming. Getting back to the question about being in the matrix, we grow up in a particular country, and every country thinks it's the best, and we get the propaganda from the government in every country. Some countries worse than others, of course. And so we grow up with a certain set of beliefs, cultural beliefs, ethnic beliefs, etc. And it's hard to undo that. And a lot of people never undo it. They go through their whole lives completely stuck in the matrix. We would say a sleep sheep or something like that. And then, of course, the question comes, well, how come some souls wake up and others don't? That's actually a pretty deep question. It's like, if you see a field of wildflowers, how come some are taller or shorter or come up first and others come up later? It's the variety of human experience and the creation. that
Yeah, 'cause that's a question I have. Is awakening available for all of us, or perhaps not?
it is, absolutely it is, but that doesn't mean everybody will awaken. In fact, getting back to the prophecy, 3/4 of humanity probably will not wake up during this cycle. They will, you know, perish during the earth changes, maybe natural death, maybe through natural disasters, through immune system failure, through various other things. And only about 1/4 of humanity is probably going to make it through the earth changes. And that's okay, because the souls that aren't ready to ascend with the earth are going to go to other planets that are more appropriate for their level of development. This is what I call a divine dispensation. I talk about it in the book Earth Changes and Beyond. And it's not like anybody's being judged, separating the wheat from the chaff. Oh, God's going to reward this one and punish that one. No, that's a simplistic way of looking at it, and it's not accurate. God loves every one of us. And that's one of the reasons why the souls that are not ready for the changes are going to go to a planet where it's more appropriate to their level of development. You know, so it's done with love and compassion. It may seem as though it's all death and destruction and doom and gloom. You know, to some people they see it that way. I don't see it that way.
I have many guests on the show, and sometimes I hear they come with different predictions. Some are saying, humanity will make it. Others are saying we won't. Others say some of humanity will make it. What is your perspective on that? There's so many different perspectives on this.
Well, let's look at population. Right now, the population is leveling off. We reached 8 billion a few years ago, and we're struggling to go past to 8.1 billion. Only Africa and some parts of Asia are still growing. The rest of the world is in negative population growth. I believe they said between 1.8 and 2 children per woman is the maintenance rate. And if you look at the statistics, about 2/3 of the countries in the world are below the maintenance level. They're below 2.0 or 1.8, whatever that cutoff is. For example, I think the United States is at 1.7. I think Norway is probably at 1.6, and there are countries that are around 1.4. I think Croatia is at 1.4. I think Serbia is at 1.5. And there's not enough replacement. And now, of course, immigrants can come into those countries to keep the population up. And that's happening in some countries. But the reason for this, there is many-fold. I have to be careful what I say in case this ends up on YouTube. But those sharp objects that go into the arm is one of the reasons why it's lowering the fertility rate in women, and it's lowering the sperm count in men. Microplastics is another one. Genetically modified organisms is another. Radiation from mobile phone towers and radio and television towers is another. Add other additives in food and drinks is another reason. But the real reason is souls are deciding, I cannot make it through this ascension process. I'm not ready to move into higher dimensions yet. So I'm going to reincarnate on a planet that's moving at a slower pace, that's at a little lower vibration. That's the real reason for all of these. These are all just catalysts for people to either exit more quickly or not have as many children. So it's declining birth rates and increasing death rates that's causing the population to eventually start declining. They predicted before 2025, the population may start declining. So and right now it looks like right around 2025 at the present trend is when the population kind of hits the stasis point where the births and the deaths are even. And then after 2025, it starts to drop, and the deaths outpace the births. And that's, I would say, an 80% likelihood at this point that's going to occur probably around the year 2025. For the various reasons which we just mentioned. And some people are going to die in war, but they've said probably less than 10% will die in wars over the next 20 years, less than 10% of the population. They said if there was a world war, about 3% would die directly due to battle and bombs and things like that, if there was a world war. And then natural disasters, 10% maybe through natural disasters, droughts, floods, hurricanes, volcanoes, etc. And then 50% through immune system failure. And they were saying this long before the COVID and all that stuff. So, so yeah, it's, and we see all of this happening. We see so many women can't give birth. I mean, I have dozens of clients every year, women who are having trouble conceiving. And some of them go to the doctor and everything's fine. The sperm count in men has dropped 50% in the last 30 to 40 years. 50% drop in sperm count. And so these things are happening just like the founders predicted.
To watch the full video, click the link below, and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel.